Szóval, hogy így mi a szájba tyutyukázott, mutyukázott Isten pöcse folyik itt, ugye, az Xboxnál, hogy így, hogy akkor most így konkrétan így bejelentették az Xbox Game Festen az új Senua játékot, aminek a stúdióját most aztán végül bezárták. Hogy így, érted, hogy így what the fuck? Hogy így az. Nem? Hogy így ez most itt mi történik? meg ez egyébként ugye egy kicsit így ki terítette az embereket, hogy nem sikerül konkrétan ugye megoldani azt, hogy az, amit megveszel, az a tiéd legyen. Szóval tök egyszerű, tök alapvető dolgokról beszélünk, érted, hogy amiért fizetsz teljes árat, azért te nem bérleti díjat fizetsz, hanem ugye megveszed. Na most ez úgy néz ki, hogy ez ma már, szóval a Blade Runner ugye egyre valóságosabb film lesz. Egyre inkább így kinövi magát egyfajta dokumentumfilmé, mint sem egy science fiction könyvfilm adaptációként. Szóval, hogy most már így tényleg nagyon keményen megy ez a céges manipuláció. Úgy, hogy természetesen ugye mögötte van még ráadásul ugye az országoknak a vezetői is. Szóval, hogy egymás faszát verik konkrétan. Egymás faszát szopkodják közbe. És hát ugye mi vagyunk azok, akik ugye a kis emberek a középúton csak néznek ki a fejükből, hogy mégis mi a faszom van itt. Álljunk már meg egy kurva pillanatra. Na mindegy. Ja, úgyhogy nézzük meg, hogy mégis mi van itt.
Why did things have to be like this? There are some people that believe that you. Why did things have to be like this? There are some people that believe that you should not have opinions over products that you paid for, that you have no right to ownership, and that you are just so tragically undereducated and misinformed into the process in which games are made that your opinions are not only useless, but honestly outright harmful to the games industry itself. Just stop asking so many questions, consumer. Keep consuming. Please. It's been a while since we talked about stop killing games. While the movement has had a lot of success, more success than I think a lot of people probably.
Szóval igen, ezért van az, hogy ez a film is szépen lassan beigazolódik. Tényleg ez a film egyre jobban kinövi magát ugye a fantasy világból egyfajta dokumentumfilmé. Itt van. Do not question. Just consume. Obey. És amúgy tényleg. Hamarosan tényleg ez lesz.
Expected that it would. It now stands against the greatest threat possible. No. Not pirate software. No, instead, it's politicians, lobbyists, and the executives of these companies that well, are just wearing the mask of people that are trying to protect the games industry when in reality they're all just career scum that are really much more interested in trying to protect their corporate interests from its own customers.
Ja.
And in this case, they've turned to just straight up lying to try to get their way. Recently, members of parliament in the EU, as well as some people over here stateside, have been meeting privately behind closed doors with CEOs like the guy from Ubisoft, as well as the ESA and Video Games Europe, the lobbying groups that are representing a lot of these guys, and it's all in an effort to just try to stop you from owning products that...
És érdekes amúgy, hogy mindig azok a cégek azok, akik a leghangosabbak ezzel kapcsolatban, akik szarok. Akik valamilyen úton, módon megbuknak, tudod? Mint az Ubisoft, a Sony, az Epic Games, tudod? Ezek a progresszív, mindenkit le akarunk fedni, mert az a legfontosabb, érted? Hogy mindenkit elérjünk, nem az, hogy kiszolgáljuk azokat a customeröket, akik egyébként fizetnek. Mert azért kurva nagy különbség van a között, ugye, hogy kik azok, akik fizetnek, és kik azok, akiket el akarnak érni. És tényleg, és ahelyett, hogy egy rendes service-t csinálnának, helyette inkább ugye megpróbálnak kiszolgálni olyan embereket, akiket eleve nem érdekel az a service, amit ők csinálnak. Ugye, úgyhogy tökörrugás van itt kőkeményen.
You paid for by effectively misinterpreting our demands, reframing the entire argument, exaggerating the damages of proposed solutions, and also trying to make it sound like this is going to destroy indie games. Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Why don't we massive corporations try to make it look like these customers are trying to pick on the little guy? Perfect. So today what I want to do is I want to talk about who is trying to take your rights away. How the games industry is now mounting a defense against its own customers, how they've been trying to twist our words in every single way they possibly can, and for all the kicking and screaming that these guys have been doing, they stand to gain just as much as we do from winning. I'm proud to be an American, and I'm proud to own a Helix mattress. That's right, today's video is sponsored by Helix. I can't speak for everyone, but as somebody that grew up during the physical era of games, the idea of ownership never crossed my mind. It was something that just simply existed. It was never under threat or even in question. Still to this day, I have an entire library of games that remain completely playable. Everything from Super Mario Bros. 3 on the NES and Power Stone on my Dreamcast to Bouncer on the PS2. There is absolutely nothing that is stopping me from playing these games, and nobody is going to be knocking on my door trying to take them away, but somewhere during the transition from physical to digital media, seemingly overnight and without any real notification or
szépen lassan, pont ezért amúgy az ilyen dolgok miatt, mert tényleg tök jó dolog. Én se panaszkodok annyit, ugye, tök jó dolog a digitális store, hogy tényleg gyors, könnyen elérhető, ugye, de ugye pont ez miatt ugye a cégek miatt, akik konkrétan megfosztanak téged a jogtól, hogy te birtokold azt, amit megveszel digitálisan, ugye azok miatt te így szépen lassan. Ezek a fizikai másolatai a régi játékoknak egyre értékesebbek lesznek. Ezt kikapcsoljuk a izét így.
or consent, the games industry stripped that ownership away from us. Now, something I haven't seen too many people try to discuss is exactly how or why this happened. So, during the physical era of games, the games were fully contained to a storage device, and the licensing agreements were generally tied to the production and distribution of the game. Publishers could print a set number of copies, they would then sell those copies, and the customers who bought them could continue using them, regardless of whether or not the publisher had renewed those agreements or just stopped printing the game entirely. Today, the architecture of that deal has changed completely. Companies can now sell an effective infinite number of digital copies, nothing stopping them from doing so, which is great for their...
Amúgy igen, úgy próbálnak, én ezt mondjuk ezt se értem. Szóval kiépítenek ugye több 100 millió, vagy akár több 100 milliárd, csilliárd dolláros datacentereket, ugye az AI-nak, és közben nincs elég tárhelyük arra, hogy legyen egy digitális másolat egy játékból, hogy te azt letölthessd bármikor, mert ugye amennyire én tudom, lehet, hogy rosszul tudom, nem annyi digitális másolat kell egy játékból, ahány ember megveszi azt a játékot. Ugye? És hogy érted, szóval minimális tárhelyekről beszélünk ahhoz képest, hogy mennyi energiát és mennyi tárhelyet felemészt az AI ezekből a datacenterekből. Érted? Szóval egy digitális produktról beszélünk, aminek konkrétan csak a másolatát kapod meg. Minden egyes alkalommal, akárhányszor letöltöd. Nem olyan van, hogy egyszer csak így elfogy a másolat digitálisan, nem? Hogy így mi a fasz? Érted?
bottom lines and their costs and their goals, but when those games are depending on authentication servers and licenses that are no longer renewed, companies can just shut down those servers and take our access along with them. The best way that I can sum this up is that the games industry has conflated its ability to continue selling something with our ability to continue owning it. Two things that should not, under any circumstances, have anything to do with one another. The only reason they do is because this industry doesn't want to fix the issue that it created, and also they want absolute control. They do not want you guys trading and reselling games because they don't get a cut. And they don't want you playing an old game forever because you're supposed to be buying the shiny new one that they just put out.
Így
which
van,
honestly,
csak az újat. Pont azért játsza be egyébként a Destiny-t a háttérbe. Amúgy. Azt is bazd meg. Fogják, kidobták az utolsó patchet, meg fogják szüntetni, és ahelyett érted, hogy ezt gondolják, hogy majd azok az emberek, akik játszottak a Destiny-vel, ha már nincs Destiny, akkor átmennek a maratonra, mert mind a kettő Bungie. Ugye, ilyen ultimate logic, amit úgy néz ki, a normális emberek nem hajlandóak látni, mert köcsögök.
would have worked out flawlessly for these guys if any of this made sense, but it doesn't. And because of that, players around the world organized against it through Stop Killing Games. We've covered this movement many times in the past, so I'm not going to rehash the entire story, but it began with Ross Scott and Accursed Farms. It survived Pirate Software's attempt to stop it, and then it used that controversy to explode onto the world stage. What began as a very niche preservation campaign became one of the most...
A normális emberek számára a maraton szar. De igen. De hát ez ilyen a világ. Efelé haladunk.
Organized and successful movements, this hobby...
Don't ask questions, just consume. Ugye? Nem tudom, láttad-e már ezt a filmet? Zseniális film. Meg kell nézni. Ez a film kötelező iskolai anyag kéne, hogy legyen.
has ever seen. I've honestly never been prouder to support something like this, and I'm honestly even more proud of the gaming community as a whole. I think it's really easy for a lot of us just to feel powerless against governments.
És a vicc az egyébként, hogy visszautasították. Nem ment keresztül. Érted? Az a vicc. They Live. Ez a címe a filmnek. They Live. Kurva nagy film. Ez a borítója. Szóval ez a Stop Killing Games eljutott a parlamentbe, ugye, az EU-ba, ugye? Nem ment keresztül, bazd meg. Érted? A consumer, ugye a felhasználója, fogyasztási védelme nem ment keresztül. Egyszerűen szimplán, ezt mondom, ezek az emberek, olyan emberek ülnek ezekbe a székekbe, akik szimplán nem látják a jövőt, akik nem látják azt, hogy egy olyan világban élünk, ami digitalizált. Nem értik, hogy igen, te kifizetsz nevetséges 80-90 dollárokat egy digitális tartalomért, ami nem a tiéd, te tényleg, konkrétan tényleg csak bérled.
Story, but it began with Ross Scott and Accursed Farms. It survived Pirate Software's attempt to stop it, and then it used that controversy to explode onto the world stage. What began as a very niche preservation campaign became one of the most organized and successful movements this hobby has ever seen. I've honestly never been prouder to support something
Így
like
van,
this.
és
And
ugye az a
honestly,
vicc,
even more proud of the gaming community.
és az a vicc, ugye, hogy nem egy gyenge industriról beszélünk, szóval ma már az elmúlt 5 évben konkrétan a gaming industry az nagyobb lett, mint a filmipar. Szóval, hogy érted, akkora iparrá kinőtte magát, akkora sikere van a játékoknak, valószínűleg köszönhetően a Covid miatt, hogy érted, number van mindenbe.
whole. I think it's really easy for a lot of us just to feel powerless against governments and corporations and just complain online and assume nothing's ever going to change. But Stop Killing Games is one of those rare moments where players actually came together, organized, and made something happen. We got the petitions in both the UK and EU, and we reached the required signatures. Ross Scott represented consumers in European Parliament. The movement is now...
Ennek a csávónak akkora fasza van, hogy a hihetetlen. Én is aláírtam, ugye? Több millió, azt hiszem másfél millió, vagy mennyi aláírás összegyűlt, azt hiszem 1 millió aláírásra volt szükség ahhoz, hogy bekerüljön a parlamentbe, hogy felhozza a témát, ugye? És azt hiszem 1,5 millió összegyűlt, vagy valami ilyesmi, és nem ment keresztül. Úgyhogy még nyomnia kell, tudod, még ki kell találnia, még puhítani kell a dolgot. De remélhetőleg előbb vagy utóbb sikerül neki. Szóval, ja, Big Dick. Komolyan.
Across into the United States, where California introduced AB 1921 to stop these companies from effectively destroying games that customers had already purchased. That bill has now passed the assembly, and it's now moving closer to becoming law. Things are moving way faster than I think most people probably expected, and apparently it's a lot faster than what the games industry expected, because the organization...
Mert egyébként ott a Warhammer Martyr Inquisitor, annak miután lement azt hiszem a 24. szezonja, utána kapott egy final patchet, mert a játék egyébként online only volt, szóval nem lehetett offline játszani. Kapott egy final patchet, ahol minden szezon elérhető lett, és offline is működik. Érted? Szóval nem egy lehetetlen dologról beszélünk.
Organizations that are representing these companies are now moving directly against us. After the European petition reached its goal, Video Games Europe came out in opposition of it. This is a collection of lawyers and lobbyists representing companies including Nintendo, Roblox, Epic Games, Activision, Microsoft, and Ubisoft. They reframed the demand for ownership, exaggerated what it would actually require, and then just kind of dismissed it wholesale. Now, those exact same lobbyists, alongside Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot, are privately meeting with European officials as they attempt to stop the movement from going any further. The exact same thing is happening right here in the United States. The Entertainment Software Association, or the ESA, a group that claims to be made up of people that love games, full stop, has sprung into action against California's bill. In reality, it's just another collection of lawyers and lifelong lobbyists that are representing companies including Amazon.
És ezt mondom, bazd meg. Olyan emberekről beszélünk, akik érted, dagadtak, öregek.
They submitted a letter trying to shut down the entire thing. In a letter written by the ESA president and CEO, the organization argues that AB 1921 threatens modern online gaming because it fundamentally misunderstands how they're built and maintained. According to the ESA, when the publisher shuts down a server-connected game, the bill would force them to choose between running it indefinitely, rebuilding it to function without technical support, or providing a full refund to every customer, regardless of how long they owned or played the game. In their words, this legislation is...
Fasság, ott a Mártír. Ott a Warhammer Inquisitor. Mondom, ők érdekes módon meg tudták oldani.
Attempting to guarantee that if somebody pays for access to an online game, they can keep that access for as long as they want. How tragic. They argue that this is unrealistic because online games depend on enormous invisible infrastructure of online servers, developers, moderators, patches, and
Hı hı.
ongoing technical support. Even after most players leave, they then claim that that infrastructure would still need to operate at nearly the same cost. They then start pointing to licensed music, likenesses, and branding, arguing that requiring these games to remain playable for as long as they possibly could go for would force these publishers to renegotiate their licenses forever
Tudod,
or remove
tudod, itt panaszkodnak az miatt, hogy license music, érted, meg ilyen fenntartás, olyan fenntartás, moderation, meg egyéb fasságok. Ö, Tudod, hogy lenne, hogy a McDonald'snak is tudod, lehet, hogy nem kéne 20 millió dollárt fizetnie Snoop Doggnak egy 10 másodperces McDonald's reklámért, és akkor nem kerülne mondjuk 12, meg nem kerülne 15 dollárba egy menü. Amúgy. Szóval, érted, ki kéne hagyni az olyan fasságokat, érted, hogy licensz music használnak, meg ki mondta egyébként azt, hogy ezeket a játékokat moderálni kell. Szóval ismét, érted, olyan dolgokról beszélünk, hogy nem a playereket akarják kiszolgálni, hanem az olyanokat, akik nem játszanak. Baromság az egészben.
content in a way that changes the creator's original intent. From there, they argue that keeping old games alive would drain money and resources from creating new ones. Every dollar spent on outdated systems, they say, is a dollar not spent building a new one, with those costs ultimately being passed down to customers. They also claim that if every game becomes a permanent obligation, publishers will simply make fewer games, less ambitious games like online games, and compare this proposal to expecting companies to continue to support their first car, smartphone, or operating system forever. The ESA said that this would entirely create a new category of consumer product, conflicting with American copyright law and disproportionately hurting smaller developers, pointing out that nearly 2/3 of American game companies have fewer than 10 employees. Their conclusion is that while AB 1921 might sound like a consumer-friendly decision, demanding forever from developers would harm creators, reduce the number of games being made, and ultimately undermine the industry the bill claims to protect. Oh man, doesn't that just sound absolutely devastating? Don't you just want to shed a tear until you realize almost none of what they just described is what the bill or Stop Killing Games is actually asking for? These snakes immediately try to reframe and obfuscate the issue, making it an entire discussion about live service games, just the same as Pirate Software did. Maybe that's where they're getting their
Amúgy
information.
igen, nagy valószínűséggel ezért paráznak a legjobban ettől. Ebbe van valami. Hogy most már ugye lényegében csak ezek a nagy cégek sírnak a legjobban ugye ez miatt a Stop Killing Games Movement miatt, mert mindegyik csak live service játékot csinál. Márpedig ugye a live service játékokat, amik tényleg csak arra épülnek, hogy online fussanak, azokat meg ugye nem lehet megoldani, hogy offline mutatható legyen, vagy offline működjön. Ugye?
From. Now, this is a popular misconception, and even some supporters will still repeat it. I'm not throwing any shade here, but Bellular has made multiple videos on the topic and still frames this all around live service games. The crew may have launched this campaign, but today, every single game, live service or not, can still fall under this exact same issue. Physical.
Hát bazd meg, gondolj bele, a köcsög Assassin's Creed játékokban, amik single player játékok, azok is ma már online kapcsolatot igényelnek, hogy mehessen rajtuk a mikrotranszakció. Egy single player játékról beszélünk, amiben tudsz mikrotranszakciót venni, hogy vegyél XP boostert, vagy pedig olyan armort, vagy olyan lovat, amit csak és kizárólag store-on keresztül lehet megvenni. És hát érted, lényegében ja, azt is érted, akkor meg kéne oldani úgy, hogy a store-t ki kéne venni belőle, az online store-t lényegében.
games aren't even physical anymore. Many of these require additional downloads, and if the servers that are supporting those downloads disappear, well, then the disc just becomes effectively useless. The same can be said for a lot of these digital games. The original Alan Wake was delisted because of music licenses. Spec Ops: The Line disappeared because of expired partnership licenses. There is a long list of games that have been affected already by this exact same problem. This is not about live service games. This is about anything and everything we buy being held hostage behind a 20,000 word end user license agreement where publishers expressly claim that they can revoke our access whenever they want, for any reason they want, or no reason at all.
Betesd a Fallout 76. Kajak van ilyen? Close 7. ZeniMax may terminate this and user license agreement at any time for any reason or no reason. What? Azt a kurva, hallod? És vannak olyan emberek, akik szeretik a Fallout 76-t. Az azért para.
And that we may even be legally required to destroy property that we paid for. These weapons-grade plutonium-enriched morons trying to use the comparison that manufacturers no longer support their first car, smartphone, or operating system, when that is quite literally the exact contradiction we are trying to point out. We can still use and own those products after official support ends. It becomes our responsibility to maintain them. But the manufacturer's not showing up at our door, kicking it down, and trying to take that stuff away simply because they no longer sell or support that stuff. Nobody is asking for permanent updates, moderation, patches, or live support. A game being playable is not the same thing as a game being actively maintained. It is such a dishonest reframing. The licensing agreements, the argument they had with that is equally dishonest in this case. Losing the right to keep selling a game is not the same thing as gaining the right to erase copies that people already bought. Publishers already remove music, replace content, and delist games when their licenses expire. None of that requires you destroying access for existing owners. Then they go on to claim that game preservation would somehow drain money away from future games, but that only happens when these companies build no end-of-life...
De ez csak is úgy lehetséges, hogyha azok a játékok, amik jönnek a jövőbe, azok mind szarok. Szóval, érted, ha egy játék jó, az emberek megveszik. Nem az állít meg engem, érted, hogy megvegyek egy új játékot, hogy mert megvan a régi. Ez mekkora fasság, milyen hülyeség. Ez is ezt mondom, hogy csak és ilyen fasz kifogások vannak. Tök fölösleges fasságokról beszélnek.
Plan and wait until the server shut down to deal with it. If preservation is considered during development, it becomes a part of their architecture, a part of their plan, without having to be this emergency rebuild years later. Keep in mind that the proposed consumer protections have no expectations of games made in the past, and instead, it's all just for games made in the future. And copyright has nothing to do with this. Owning a copy of a game does not mean you own that intellectual property. I don't know why these guys would try to frame it that way. It just means that you're allowed to continue using something that you paid for. Well, at least I can say that these guys never fail to surprise me. This is an industry that is in open contempt, active contempt in this case, of their own audience, and they believe that their ability to make money off of something needs to be directly tied to our ability to own something, which makes absolutely no sense. And I'm hoping that lawmakers also see it from that perspective, because these guys are trying to do everything they possibly can to say and just wiggle their way out of this situation because they just don't have an answer to this argument. That's really all this is. These guys are so stupid. So unbelievably stupid. The ESA represents some of the largest corporations within the games industry. Yet, for whatever reason, you guys are trying to come out and you're trying to move this towards indie studios, 10-person teams. Like, these guys are going to be the ones that are going to get crushed under this kind of regulation. Miss me with that. now you're just straight up lying. These guys don't even use the same kind of infrastructure as you. They're not using the same kind of licenses. They're not using product placement. They're not hiring Hollywood voice actors to come in and voice act gelatinous cubes. They're not using music licenses. I guess unless you're Annapurna in some cases, but it just doesn't
igen,
make
hát
any...
nem mindenki, igen, nem mindenkinek van egy stúdiója a milliárdos apucitól. Ugye nem mindenki milliómos egy milliárdos apucitól, aki képes fölvásárolni, az meg több license-t a szaros játékához, ami egyébként meg is bukott. Várjál, hogy is. Igen. Ugye? Egy ilyen játékról beszélünk.
Any sense, and for the fact these guys would come through and try to steal that valor and try to use their name to be able to shift the focus of this just makes them that much more disgusting, because these guys likely want their games to be playable forever. Talk to most indie devs, they support stop killing games, always have. This is just so pathetic. Gaslighting and trying to reframe the issue around live service games as well, that doesn't even make any sense, man.
Ezek így körbe ülnek, érted? Ülnek így körbe, és egymás faszát verik. Érted? Az országvezetők, érted? Ezek a progresszív köcsögök, meg ugye a nagy cégek. Egymás faszát verik.
Law that's being proposed, as well as Stop Killing Games just as an organization, has gone out of their way to make sure that the live service free-to-play slop that these companies have been trying to peddle is not a part of this discussion. That expectation's not there. This is about games that people buy. For the free-to-play stuff, if it dies, it dies. Most people don't have a problem with that. Now, it's probably for the best in a lot of cases. It just kind of goes to show that these guys don't have any leg to stand on here.
Sure.
They've been caught red-handed. It's absolutely embarrassing. For all the lawyers these guys have, this is all they could possibly muster. The only thing that's going to stop killing games at this point is whether or not any of these politicians can be bought off.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. What makes matters worse is just like how stupid all of this is. Because for these greaseball lawyers and CEOs and these lobbyists that are going in and they're trying to actively work against our sense of ownership, these guys don't realize how much this actively works against their own business. Because the minute you start destroying the things that we bought...
És az a vicc, hogy mennyi embertől hallottam azt, hogy mennyien támogatják, vagy hát így szimplán nem foglalkoznak azzal, érted, hogy te kifizetsz valamit, és az nem a tiéd. És fogják, és gondolkodás nélkül fogják magukat, és elmennek, és megveszik. Érted, hogy így eszük, mondom, ott van a PlayStation például, ugye azzal a 30 napos licenc lejárati baromsággal, ugye az új frissítésbe. Nem is foglalkoznak vele, érted? Őket nem érdekli. Ilyeneket mondanak, hogy miért nincs interneted? Hát mert hogy ugye 30 naponta rá kell frissítened, ugye, hogy 30 naponta legalább egyszer rá kell kötned a PlayStation-ödet az internetre, vagy különben a letöltött játékaidat a saját accountodon nem tudod használni. Érted? Hogy ennek mi a fasz, ennek mi értelme van? És vannak olyan emberek, akik tényleg így szimplán nem foglalkoznak vele, és azt mondják, hogy hát kit érdekel, mert úgyis rajta van az interneten non-stop. Mit szólnál ahhoz, ha te vennél egy 4 kerekű autót, de a harmadik kerék az autón az nem lehet a tiéd. Azt illegális lenne birtokolnod. Csak és kizárólag bérelheted. Ez ugyanaz. Érted? Hogy van egy fizikai terméked, ami nem a tiéd, ami nem lehet a tiéd legálisan, és csak és kizárólag ahhoz, hogy funkcionálisan működjön, ugye 4 kerékkel, csak és kizárólag bérelheted a 4. kerekét. Ez kb. Egyébként ugyanaz. Érted? Szóval, hogy így van valamid, amit megveszel, és nem használhatod akár meddig. Nem tartatod meg.
How is that going to make us trust the next thing you sell?
Ja.
Back in 2024, financial analyst Matt Piscatello reported that 53% of Nintendo Switch software sales were digital compared to 78% on PlayStation 5
Oh,
and
yeah.
90.
Ja, igen. Ezek azok a dolgok, amik 100%-on meg fogják dobni a Nintendo Switchnek az árát. A Nintendo Switch 2 szerintem jövőre még egyszer emelni fog. Mert konkrétan a Nintendo Switch az, ami lényegében plug and play, és olyan játékokat tesz le, amik nem feltétlenül igényelnek, tudod, Day One patch-t ahhoz, hogy működhessenek. Nem olyan játékokról beszélünk, tudod, a Nintendo Switch-en, mint a God of War Ragnarok, ami Day One patch nélkül konkrétan nekem legalábbis volt benne egy story breaking bug, amit ahol nem tudtam tovább jutni. Vagy nem ilyen cyberpunkról beszélünk, ami konkrétan a fizikai verziója a játéknak, az csak egy béta a lemezen. És akkor szóval, hogy így nem tudod végigjátszani, mert egyébként meg annyira bugos, mint a szar. Szóval, szerintem egyébként a Nintendo Switchnek az árát ezt meg fogja dobni. Mert ott még mindig fizikai kártyán van rajta a játék.
91% on Xbox. Physical PC releases barely even exist anymore, so that market is effectively 100% at this point, which all lines up with Capcom's recent financial reporting showing that 90% of their unit sales are coming from digital downloads. Almost everyone buys games digitally now, and it makes complete sense. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's a hell of a lot more convenient. We just press buy and we immediately have access to a game. We don't got to worry about driving to a store, discovering it's out of stock, searching for it somewhere else, making room on a shelf, or worrying about a disc being damaged. We just install it, play it, and then uninstall it whenever we want, and then install it again when we want to come back to it. But as the technology has improved, the games industry has quite literally just changed the terms of that transaction. Digital distribution, permanent internet connections, account systems, and remote authentication were all kind of sold to us as these conveniences, but instead they've just stripped away our control while making these games actively worse. And we've seen the consequences of this every single year. Sony completely destroyed the momentum of Helldivers 2 by trying to force PlayStation account.
Szóval igen, ez is egy vicces dolog, igen, hogy egyre szarabb minőségű játékokat kapunk, amíg egyre szarabbul futnak, egyre drágább hardveren, és ezeket a játékokat egyébként mi nem is birtokoljuk, hanem csak béreljük teljes áron $90. Ugye? What the fuck?
Logins, revoking access through roughly 180 countries. It damaged the game's reputation, completely destroyed its sales momentum, and then that was all because Sony wanted players inside of their account ecosystem under the guise of better service and moderation. Then there's anti-piracy systems that are forcing single-player games online for absolutely no reason, blocking legitimate customers from even playing some of these games. Third-party software like Denuvo that is actively damaging performance with constant DLC checks in games like Monster Hunter Wilds or CPU bottlenecks in games like Dragon's Dogma 2.
Őszintén a Monster Hunter Wild is, és a Helldivers 2 is, nem értem, miért nincsen offline módja. Nem értem, miért nincsen offline opció. Mind a két játék lehetne játszani offline. Mert egyébként van benne szóló mód. Mind a két játékban, szóval hogy miért nem lehetne játszani offline is akár. Kurva nagy fasság.
which contributed to those games being nearly unplayable for a lot of players. All of these systems are existing to protect these publishers, control their intellectual property, or extract more value from players. They're collecting our data to advertise products to us later, inflating their account numbers for their shareholders, or they're just sharing our information with their other business partners. Whatever the justification they use, it's always the same result.
Yep.
More barriers between the players and the games that they're paying for, and those barriers are burning through a lot of trust at an incredible rate. Every time a game launches with anti-piracy software and terrible performance, I become a lot more hesitant to buy their next game that's using those tools. Every time a company gets caught selling personal data or suffering a massive breach, like, I don't know, Sony or PlayStation in this matter, I become less willing to create another third-party account, or I'm a lot more likely just to avoid that game entirely.
Mondom, hát ja, lassan elérjük azt a szintet, amit ezekben a cyberpunk filmekben látunk, mint a Blade Runnerben, hogy az információ a személyről fontosabb és többet ér, mint maga a személy. Mert ugye az információn keresztül képesek táplálni ugye a gépet.
Entirely. Removing our sense of ownership pulls out the very last leg that this entire marketplace has left to stand on. Confidence that the thing that we pay for will remain ours. The digital marketplace only works when customers are treating these purchases like ownership. Most of us have accepted digital downloads because, well, they promised convenient access whenever we wanted it. Many people probably would have never even accepted that deal if they had understood that that access would disappear whenever the publisher just kind of decided it's just no longer profitable for them anymore. Games have been increasingly designed to just have this built-in death state where there's just so many expiration dates on so many of these games anymore, even when there's no technical reason for any part of these games to even...
Meg lehet nézni a Space Marine-t is. A Space Marine 2 például ugye én egy sokkal nagyobb projektre számítottam. Ha tudtam volna, hogy ennyi lesz a Space Marine 2, nem veszem meg. Én azt hittem, egy sokkal több ideig támogatott és sokkal tartalmasabb live service játékról fogunk beszélni. Kurva nagy csalódás a Space Marine 2 nekem. Arról nem is beszélve, hogy ugye azt tervezték, hogy ebbe az évben lesz nekik ugye az utolsó update-je, az utolsó tartalom. Csak ugye a community nyomásra ráhúztak még egy extra évet. De egyébként ennyi, két év alatt be akarták zárni a bizniszt.
Even disappear. We condemn planned obsolescence in physical products because, well, deliberately disposable goods harm consumers. Digital products have largely escaped that conversation because, well, their destruction is not leaving any physical landfill, but the financial and cultural loss is still very much real. If a game I paid for disappears, I lose the product and the money that I spent. The publisher loses nothing. Tell me exactly how is that fair? These guys have created a transaction where only one side is assuming all of the risk, and then they're expecting that customer to trust them when they go to show up for their next purchase. We've been watching as these live service games have been going from remaining playable after active...
És ez is csak az olyanok számára furcsa, mint én, tudod. Akik felnőttek ugye a PS1-es, PS2-es érába, hogy csak és kizárólag lemezen volt a játék, plug and play volt, nem voltak bugok, nem kellett day one patch, meg ilyesmi. És az olyanok számára furcsa ezt, tudod, hogy így a mai gyerekeket totálisan beidomítják, totálisan ilyen agymosottá varázsolják őket, és elfogadtatják velük a tényt, hogy 70, 80, 90 dollár egy játékért, az nem jelenti azt, hogy te azt birtoklod, hanem az lényegében tényleg egyfajta lejárati idővel rendelkező termék, ami előbb vagy utóbb el fog tűnni. És ez a mai generációnak tök normális, nekünk, az idősebbeknek, meg furcsa, meg nem működik. És ez csak generáció kérdése. Hozzá lesz szoktatva idővel a gyerek. Ez ilyen egyszerű.
support has ended to dying within weeks and sometimes even days of their launch. Now, there's definitely a lot to say about games like High Guard and Concord. We definitely had a lot of fun watching those games crash and burn, but they're establishing a precedent for just how temporary these games are starting to become.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily apply the exact same way to single-player games, but by stripping away our ownership for the games that we pay for, this is the first step towards treating them no differently. At some point, players are going to start to question whether they should even be buying anything at all, especially at the prices that these companies are charging for. And honestly, it's not even the right language to use because they're changing that language right now. We're not even buying these games. We're just renting them under end-user license agreements and say that they can revoke our access for no reason at all. I mean, how am I supposed to feel comfortable spending $40 to $70 on a game when I have no guarantee that that access will remain? Especially when that access can disappear over licensing disputes, account requirements, and business decisions that have nothing to do with me and are completely outside of my control. How is anybody supposed to justify pre-ordering a game when they don't even own whatever they're ordering? What are we doing here? I mean, you shouldn't even...
Így van. Miért költsem a pénzemet valami olyanra, ami nem lesz, ami nem az enyém, és igazából bármikor azt mondhatja, érted, a store-nak a vezetője, hogy oké, no refund, és a játék eltűnik a store-ból. Így igazából ennyi volt. Érted?
Pre-ordering at all, but you guys still get my point on this. And if that is the deal, well, then how are these companies going to justify charging even more? We've seen these guys talk about charging $80 or $100 for some of these games. How do they even justify selling consoles at increasingly indulgent prices when the software itself can just disappear?
Ja, és most már azt se tudod megcsinálni, ugye köszönhetően a PlayStationnek, hogy te majd a PlayStation-ödön megtartod azokat a játékokat úgy, hogy offline-ba kapcsolod a PlayStation-t. Ugye köszönhetően az új patchnek. És mostantól kezdve ugye 30 naponta rá kell kötnöd a PlayStation-ödet az internetre, vagy különben egyáltalán nem tudod használni semmire konkrétan. És ja, érted, mi a fasz?
The higher these prices go, the harder it becomes to enter into the hobby at all, remove our sense of ownership on top of that, and these purchases become almost impossible to justify. How do these guys not understand this? Ownership is not some charitable concession that you're making towards your customers. It's what's giving these purchases value. The idea of permanence is a part of that price, and also our willingness to spend money on something. People are willing to spend hundreds of dollars on hardware and build libraries containing thousands of dollars of software because they believe that those games are still going to be there tomorrow. That confidence is a part of the foundation of the entire digital marketplace. The moment that you remove it, well, every single game is going to become a risk. And the higher the game's price, the greater that risk is going to become. A $70 purchase is already a really difficult choice for a lot of people to make. Add expansions, deluxe editions, microtransactions, season passes.
Főleg ilyen minőség mellett. Hülye vagy. Ez nagyon kemény, bazzeg, $70 egy játékért, és még ráadásul fos is.
Now, you guys are asking people to invest hundreds of dollars into something that you refuse to guarantee will even survive. That doesn't encourage trust, it doesn't encourage spending, and it's just teaching people to wait or just avoid these games entirely. I mean, do these guys have any idea how much a position like this is going to bring about not only a loss in sales, but also a massive return to piracy? I mean, my first thought would probably be that an unofficial copy might actually be a little bit more permanent than one I could pay for at this point. As Gabe Newell had said, piracy is a service issue. Well, this is like the biggest service issue imaginable. These guys just need to change their perspective. By retaining ownership and permanence, your old games can continue creating value long after their initial release. I mean, look at Destiny 2 right now. What if those guys just decided, you know what, we're just shutting down the servers, we're done supporting this game? They would have missed out on being the top-selling game on Steam for the past 2 weeks with some of the best player numbers we've seen in years and a ton of people coming back and playing the game. There's a ton of money these guys would have missed out on. These games have a lot more value than I think these guys give them credit for. They introduce players to new franchises. They help maintain their communities. They're driving interest in their sequels. These companies are constantly digging through their old catalogs for the next remake, yet here they are fighting for the right to destroy those same catalogs whenever maintaining them becomes inconvenient. Stop killing games. is not asking these companies to abandon their profit. It is asking them to stop destroying the trust that makes that profit possible. This is to their own benefit. An end-of-life plan tells your customers that their money still means something even after the publisher is moving on. It is making these digital purchases safer, giving people more confidence to invest in a lot of these online games and a lot of these digital games, and it's making the future of the product easier to sell. The ESA keeps trying to present ownership as this permanent burden on the industry, but in reality, ownership is one of the strongest reasons that anyone would keep buying from any of it. I mean, these guys know this better than anybody else. That's the whole reason that Sony had ended up beating Xbox back with the PlayStation 3 and Xbox One era. It's because Xbox came out and wanted to treat games like they were a one-punch ticket, and the minute it was on your console, that's it. And people hated the idea of not having autonomy and not having control over their own purchases. Sony came out and said, hey, this is how easy it is to be able to trade your games, and handed it to one guy from the next, and bam, that's how it is. After that, reputation was already cooked on the Xbox side. Everybody went over to PlayStation. It was GG after that. But
bemutatott nekik, hogy hülye vagy.
People just don't want to lose control of their games. It's really as simple as that. These are, especially with how much money we are spending on these things. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not really somebody that likes to spend $70 on something that I can't hold and keep. If I can't hold it, that's one thing, but if I can't keep it, that's an entirely different story. And you know, like, it's so much money that these guys are going to be losing out on if they keep trying to push on this. I'm immediately thinking of CD Projekt Red right now and how these guys are about to put out DLC for The Witcher 3, and that wouldn't happen if we didn't have some sense of ownership, if people weren't able to hold on to these games, if these guys just cut support and cut access and just walked away whenever they wanted to. And these guys are going to be making so much money from this. Everybody that owns that game, which is a lot of people, it's like tens of millions of players, everybody's going to be buying that DLC. Everybody's going to be playing it. Why wouldn't you? It's one of the greatest games of all time. These guys need to stop treating the past like it's something they need to run away from, and they instead need to value it. Because we do. Because we spent money on it. So you should value it too. You wouldn't be where you are today if it wasn't for the support that we showed you before. Stop Killing Games is effectively saving the industry from itself right now. This is more like an intervention than it is to anything else. They should be trying to support something like this. They should maybe take the time to stop and think, hey, wait a minute, maybe ownership isn't the problem. Maybe the problem is the fact that we have an over-reliance on licenses and third-party companies that are doing things and making things that we otherwise should be doing in-house.
Amúgy igen. Ez a Stop Killing Games konkrétan megpróbálja megakadályozni ezeket a cégeket, hogy főbelőjék saját magukat. Érted? Mert az emberek nem akarják elveszteni, érted, a hitüket ezekbe a cégekbe. Nem akarok, tudod, nem költeni játékokra. Mert szeretem a játékokat. Csak hogyan költsek én tényleg $70, $80 egy játékra, ha egyszer csak tényleg azt mondják, hogy kész, ez innentől kezdve nem a tiéd, és még nincs, vissza se kapod a pénzedet. Tök egyszerű szerintem, tök egyértelmű amúgy. Úgyhogy ja. Durva dolgok ezek. És egyre parább lesz. Mondom, ez kezd túlságosan valóságos lenni.